Good evening, friends, and welcome to another edition of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace. We are retired New York City police detectives, and if you like all things true crime related from the police detective's perspective, hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell, so you get all things DutyRon and Ed Wallace when we go live or upload another video. But look, we have a special guest with us tonight, attorney Melanie Little, who just hit 10,000 subscribers on her channel.
Yay.
Everybody give her a big round of applause in under 90 days, right? Oh my God. You're rocking and rolling.
Thanks, you guys.
Great
You
job.
guys
All right, congratulations.
pushed me down the hill. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
No, never down, always up.
Always
Yes.
up. Exactly. Tonight we're going to be covering the Delphi case. Shocking new documents released by the defense in court. Just unbelievable findings. People are speaking about it. We're going to get a coverage from the police crime scene investigators perspective. We're going to also get an attorney's perspective down here, Melanie, and Mike King from Profiling Evil is going to come on and give us his experience and his perspective from the cult side, because as we all know, Mike King has covered many cases where it involves cults of different types. So he's going to be joining us from Washington, D.C. He's running to his hotel room. I told him to take his time because we don't want to see anybody get hurt. But Mike King, I'm looking forward to getting together with him. Ed, I want to start with you first before we say thank you to our Patreon supporters and everybody. What is your basic take on from the crime scene perspective? Because I know you dot your I's and cross your T's throughout your whole career and your whole entire life. What's your take on how this investigation is unfolding and what we're finding out?
Well, after reading the shocking, I don't know how to put it, the shocking defense, what it is, a defense report to the judge, I was mystified of how shoddy the crime scene investigation was done at the scene.
Yeah,
I didn't understand why they didn't do things that are standard practice in our discipline. And I don't understand who made the decisions on what to do and what not to do, what to take and what not to take. Okay. It's like some of our standards were just thrown out the window.
Right. And, we hear, and Melanie and I have been talking pretty much all day back and forth about this, but we covered this so many different times. We've covered different angles, but, in the state, in Indiana, the state police, Doug Carter, the superintendent, he said, this is the biggest case in Indiana's history. You would think that, as our good friend Dave Rader from EquiSearch always says, they would throw the kitchen sink at it. And what I mean by that, folks, is all of your best investigators, all of your best forensic people, all of your best, lab techs and whatever you need, your best attorneys, you throw everything at this because you want to seek justice for the victims and their families, right? Melanie, I wanted to get your take before we played a little piece from Court TV from an attorney's perspective.
This is 136 pages of riveting reading. And every page gets crazier than the next. It's a motion for a Franks hearing, essentially, which is exactly what this is. This is a motion for a Franks hearing to determine whether or not the police officer lied to the judge to obtain the search warrant to search Alan's home. And if they have the hearing and if they find that that is true, that they withheld exculpatory evidence or lied in order to get that search warrant, then the gun gets thrown out because it's called fruits of the poisonous tree. And that is what this motion is all about. But there are so many facets to it and so many allegations and so many things that we're just now learning about this case. I mean, we didn't even know before this motion was filed how these girls were killed, right? I mean, it's crazy the stuff that came out today because there's been a gag order. Nobody knew anything.
100% craziness, and the amount of information in these documents. And we can't go into them all because they released them and then they pulled them back. So it's really hard for us to start showing documents. And I don't even like to do that because it takes up valuable time. So let's go to Vinny at Court TV just to listen to a little bit of piece while we're waiting for Mike King to come in.
Coming to light through these papers that were filed by the defense. But let's remind you, this crime scene, absolutely brutal. Brutal. If you're a family member, one of the parents, grandparents, loved ones of these two girls, you have to be absolutely horrified.
And I love that Vinny did this, because this is a very, very true statement here. The families who have been waiting all of these years now have to relive and hear some of these horrific details. So kudos to Vinny and Court TV.
About what has now become publicly revealed and is part of this case. But the defense is saying everything that is being revealed helps them, proves that someone else is responsible for this, not Richard Allen, the man who's been accused. So the question really is, for everyone involved, and ultimately for those 12 jurors who will make the decision here and tell us what happened, what does the evidence say? What does this evidence mean? Evidence speaks, not literally, but it tells a story. And when this becomes a murder trial, which it's on its way to being a trial, that evidence has to tell the story. And will this story be that Richard Allen is the one responsible, or is the story, wait a minute, this doesn't look like Richard Allen did it? It looks like something completely different. And tonight we're going to look at this evidence and try to figure out what it's telling us now, what we are learning and what has been revealed. One of the questions that the defense is throwing out there is was this a one-man job? And they're saying no, that everything suggests that it could not have been Richard Allen alone committing this crime. Now, they're not conceding that he's there and he got a helper. No, they're saying completely different people, a different group is responsible. But you have to look at all the facts at the scene and the circumstances surrounding what happened to Abby and Libby that day. And could one man by himself pull this off? We're going to address that question tonight on this program. Also, and this is looming large, and we'll be continuing to talk about this every time we talk about the cases, was this a ritualistic killing? Was this some sort of bizarre ritual that took place that day? And is it connected to Odinism, a word that was 1,000% foreign to me till about, just over 24 hours ago? Now we know it's this ancient Nordic religion that, according to the defense, has been hijacked by white nationalists, a group, and specifically some that are in Indiana, that this is somehow a racial, some sort of racist killing of these two girls? How do those pieces fit together? Does it fit together? And there's always two ways to look at this, and I want you to remember this always when the defense is putting out an alternative theory. Look at their theory and then just flip it on its head and imagine if what the defense is saying is the prosecution's case. And if what the prosecution is saying is the defense case, right? Because that's what would happen. If you turned around and as prosecutors, you went after the people that the defense says are responsible, is there more evidence against them? Or that something was done here purposely and there's some message that is left behind at the scene. So let's take a look, based upon what the defense has filed here, what they are saying Abby and Libby appeared to look like. Now they have Libby lying flat on her back, left arm stretched above her head, touching the base of the large tree. Now, what you're looking at, this depiction, is what we put together based upon this memorandum. This actual image that you're looking at right now is not something that is part of any filing by anyone. We here at Closing Arguments, based upon this description, have put this together. Libby's right arm was placed along the side of her body. A large branch was placed on her left shoulder. The branch extended above Libby's head and below her legs. Two smaller branches formed a V where her legs joined. Both sides of the V extended upwards towards Libby's head. The branch extended across Libby's body on a line from her right shoulder to her left shoulder. Now, Abby. Just feet away from Abby, at an angle, Abby's legs are feet away from Libby's legs, their heads just a few feet apart. Abby was on her back, elbows were bent with her arms placed on her chest. Abby's left hand and arm near the left side of her face, right hand and arm near the right side of her face. Okay, there, a little bit of interpretation, however you interpret that. That's how we are, but it could be different, but it's something like that, I would think. Abby's left leg was straight while her right leg was bent at the knee. Her bent right leg was under her left leg. 3 tree branches were placed on top of Abby in the shape of an asterisk. Above Abby's head, smaller sticks placed over her hair, crudely mimicking horns or antlers. So again, looking at this, we put that together based upon the description I read to you. Now, what I read to you is directly from the papers filed by the defense. So this is what they are alleging the evidence says, based upon.
You say those images look like, the arrangement of those sticks. So let's start with the one of Abby, and it shows 3 sticks. Now, we have not placed her body here because this is how it was provided to me. We don't know exactly what the positioning on top of her was like, but this is supposed to be a representation of what the image looked like, the way the sticks were formed. Now let's put up the image from Libby. And there's 5 sticks involved here by my count. And you can look at these and decide if they look like something to you.
All right, I'm going to stop this here because I want to get to the picture to go with you, Ed, about this. Hold on a second. Give me 2 seconds.
Well, I mean, I'd like to eventually talk about those tree branches.
Absolutely. We are going to. And I don't know what the hell's happening here. Okay, there it is. So this is what they're talking about, a symbol, which, again, this is a graphic representation. This isn't from the crime scene photos or anything like that. But they made this out to be an F. You see here and the top part, and they colored this in red because this is blood. So I wanted to go to you, Ed, not just on this photo and this representation, but your whole take as a crime scene investigator. If you came across a scene like this, what would you be doing? Would these sticks be of significance to you? And I'll let you roll with it from here, Ed.
Well, first of all, I would be looking for how the bodies got to this location. Is there any sign or any evidence that shows a path leading to or away from these victims? So I can try to find how they got in here. And if I do find a path, then is there any evidence of footwear impressions or tire tracks or anything like that that could, I can try to get an idea if there's more than one person involved in here. Were these girls carried in one at a time, or were they carried in together with multiple people involved? And I would be looking for all of that. I would be documenting everything, written notes. I'd be taking hundreds of photographs in all directions, long range, medium range, close-ups, with and without scales. Everything gets documented. Then I'd get the 3D laser scanner out, whether it's, and scan the whole scene and leave no stone unturned. I'd be photographing all of this blood that was on the tree, so-called blood. I mean, they were talking about, it looked like the blood was painted on the tree. Well, I mean, I can't trust anything that was just depicted there as blood because that's somebody's idea of what it was like. Because I don't know where did they look at a photograph and then from memory did they do that? But I would be looking at that tree and the bark and the blood and I would, if I could, I would do a bloodstain pattern analysis of it. You know, is it cast off? Is it arterial spatter? You know, what are we dealing with here? Or was it in fact a contact transfer where, I mean, your bloody finger or fingers were used to try to write an F or whatever the case may be. But in any event, photographing all of that blood, measuring it, sketching it, okay, scanning it, and I'm going to cut that section of the tree out, and I'm going to take it.
I knew it.
Okay, and and then getting back to the branches, well, there's a lot of evidence that could be associated with the branches. It should not have been left behind and to come back several days later to retrieve. Okay, somebody purposely put those branches on top of the body. These bodies were definitely positioned. Whether it's ritual or not, I don't care about that. That's not my thing. That's not my expertise. But somebody purposely put those branches on top of the body after the bodies were positioned the way they were positioned. Now, there could be DNA on the branches. Where did these branches come from? Did they come from indigenous trees in the locale where the bodies were found, or did anybody search the defendant's property to see if any branches from those trees in that area? That's another thing. The branches have to be identified to what kind of tree it was. DNA can be taken from the tree to match the specific tree that the branches came from. Tool marks. You got to look at the ends of the branches. How were they cut? What kind of tool was used to separate these branches from the tree that they were once attached to? Okay. Then you got to go look for those tools. If you can identify the tool marks, then you got to look for those tools. You can get DNA from the tree branch, try to match it back to the tree that it came from. You can get DNA from the branch and try to match it to the tool that was used to cut it off. Okay. So because the tool should have the DNA from the tree on it if it wasn't cleaned in between cutting on the limbs, the tree limbs. There's so much evidence that could have been. You could have MVAC'd the entire the tree branches and try to find who touched this tree branch. Now that's another thing too with the cartridge case that was found underneath the body. According to the filing here, allegedly there was no photographs taken of the cartridge case,
Or the officers taking it into custody. Like, this is according to the court filings. That was
right. I mean,
correct me in that if we're wrong, but this is all not made up stuff. This is what was provided to the defense by the state. Melanie?
100%. 100%. I mean, I could read to you from the court document if you want me to tell you exactly what they say they do not have with regard to that bullet.
shoot.
Okay. It says it should be noted that as of this date of this memo, which was just 2 days ago, the defense has no photographs of the bullet allegedly found between the girls after it was removed from the ground. No photo or video, for example, shows the bullet as it was being pulled out of the ground. No photo or video of the bullet immediately after it was pulled from the ground. No video or photograph of all sides of the bullet immediately after it was pulled from the ground. No photographs of the bullet next to a measuring device to show its length. No photos that show what the bullet looked like once it was pulled out of the ground could provide proof that it is the same bullet that ended up in the evidence locker room. Shockingly, in his deposition, Sheriff Liggett admitted that he also had not seen any photographs of the purported bullet taken once the bullet was pulled from the ground. In other words, the only photos that the defense has found in the discovery it has received are of the bullet still buried in the ground. That's it.
Unbelievable.
Well, you know, again, the forensic standards weren't followed there. You got long range, medium range, with and without scales and numbers, and then close-ups with and without scales and numbers. That should have been taken, and the defenses should be entitled to that. Apparently, they didn't get it in discovery, so they're saying that it doesn't exist. But again, you know, and what about testing the bullet for DNA? Did we hear if any of that was it? Now, they're using the wrong word, and I just did myself. It's not a bullet. Bullet is the projectile at the end of a full cartridge. This is a live cartridge that was ejected from the chamber of a semi-automatic weapon, in this case, a 40 cal. semi-automatic weapon, which was what was recovered based on the search warrant from the defendant's home. And they're saying that ballistic tool mark examinations were done on the cartridge, and the ejector and extractor marks match the particular firearm that they recovered. Now, you know, I haven't seen the forensic ballistic report about this, but this is what is alleged. And that's how they linked that cartridge to the defendant's gun. Because the cartridge, as I said, is a live cartridge. It wasn't fired. It was manually ejected. So someone racked the slide back on a semi-automatic gun and ejected a cartridge that was already in the chamber. Now, there's some evidence on the victim's cell phone that that particular action may have been recorded, where there is sound of that occurring on the video cell phone, on the cell phone. Yeah. Now, here's another thing. The defense attorney was, one defense attorney was saying that he did not believe that one person could do this. And that's not true either. I've had many cases. In fact, I had a death penalty case.
Can you elaborate?
Yes. I had a death penalty case in Queens where over a bad drug deal, a perp went back to the drug dealers, which were all females, and he rounded these females up, 5 of them, okay, and he put them in a single bedroom, and he intimidated and scared them so much that they didn't defend themselves when he was pulling them out of the bedroom one by one, raping them and killing them.
Oh my
okay.
God.
And inside of their bedroom, they had access to a loaded revolver. So when he closed the door after he took out the first victim or the second victim, they had access to a gun. Now, the way he intimidated them is he shot the first girl in the bedroom with the others present, shot her in the head, killed her immediately, and he left her there dead on the floor. Okay, and the others were in such fear and shock that they didn't defend themselves. They didn't go for the gun. They just one by one were pulled out of the bedroom and raped and killed, except for the one woman who jumped out of the window and escaped there after jumping out a second-story window, breaking her leg and running and getting help.
I'm almost sorry that I asked you to elaborate, but thank you for, I mean, that's a prime example that when you have a weapon that is capable of killing someone, and you have young teenagers, 13 and 14 at the time, right? These girls are 13 and 14. Libby, German, 14. Abby, 13. It's enough to scare the shit out of them to make them do whatever the person wants them to do. So command and control with a firearm or any type of deadly weapon, Ed just gave you a prime example of that. I want to play this piece from WTHR because they did some really great coverage, and I have to download some images that Mike King sent me. So I'm going to back out. If this is done by the time I have to download some images, so I have to leave the studio. So you, Melanie, and Ed, you got the show after this thing is done playing. But this is about 5 minutes. So if anybody needs to get water, go for it.
136-page filing outlines what could be the defense team's strategy. Richard Allen is charged.
Okay, what happened?
He left.
He left, and the video didn't last. The video didn't last 5 minutes either.
Well, all right, we can talk about this then, because I just found something interesting. They are not saying that one person did not commit this crime exactly. What they are saying is that they don't think that one person could have committed this crime in less than 1 hour and 17 minutes, based on the timeline that they are giving for the time of death, which is interesting.
Yes. Now, what are they basing the time of death on? And that's another thing. Or since you bringing up the time of death, these bodies were definitely posed, no doubt in my mind, given the positions they were found in. And they were one victim's clothing was removed and then put on the other victim. Okay, and there was a lack of blood due to that suspicious, given the nature of the injuries and the wounds, the slicing of the throats and so forth. Okay, and there doesn't appear to be any blood around the scene to match those wounds. Now, one of the ways that we could tell whether or not the victims were murdered someplace else and then moved there is the position of the lividity on the body. Okay, so what is, again, the lividity is the blood pooling due to gravity to the lowest points of the body in the position that the body is found in. Okay, so if these
only a few
Okay,
weeks
guys,
after the
I'm
girls
back.
were murdered.
what
I-
happened?
Something must have happened because we had just a blank screen. So that whole time you guys were talking, we were not we were live, but there was just a blank screen. So I had to go and download the pictures that Mike King sent me. I see Mike is here. So
We're
that
having a good conversation too.
Yeah.
Did the audience hear what we were saying?
No, they didn't, because all we had was 2 minutes of the banner. They just saw the banner in the background. So it is what it is. Somebody just said it's Satan blocking the truth tonight.
No, it's Odin.
So it was just 2 minutes and 13 seconds, thank God. But I'm gonna blame Mike for this one because he sent me some photos and I wanted to go download them, and I thought that I could leave the studio, but I couldn't. So
Who are you kidding? You went to the bathroom.
2 minutes. No, I downloaded the photos. 2 minutes and 13 seconds. We'll blame it on Satan. Without further ado, I want to introduce our good friend, our brother in blue, retired commander, as they introduce him on Court TV, a great investigator, Mike King. Thank you for coming in, Mike, and thank you for being here.
Hey, fellas. Hi, Melanie. I'm
Hi,
so appreciative of you letting me join you. What a fun night this should be.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Hey, and just before we get started, the chat is saying they heard us.
Oh, cool.
I was adding you guys back in. They might have heard your audio, but they didn't see you. All they saw
Yeah,
was.
but they said we heard it all. Okay.
Good. So then that's good, because it sounded like a great conversation. I was just going to download some photos, but Mike, I wanted to just quickly, because I know you're in DC and I appreciate you being here. You have been a great friend of Crime Time with DutyRon. We met early on when you first started profiling evil.
Yes.
And the amount of information, with the Profiling Evil Academy and all that stuff, you provide such a great insight from the law enforcement side. But I wanted to just go to you quick to get as I queue up your interview with Vinny from Court TV, your take on this cult side of this document dump. I know that you have much experience in investigating this type of stuff, but the audience, although they probably heard it from you and they heard it on Court TV, we want to get it from you here.
Oh, well, thank you. Gosh, what an honor to be with you. I just love listening to you guys and your approach, and frankly, the sound approach that you have. And I guess that's what I really want to get across to folks as we look at this. And I used to face this a lot, Ron, when I would teach how to investigate cults and closed societies, was that as tantalizing as the idea of a cult or chasing Satan is, what we're really good at is focusing on the elements of crime. And if those elements have been violated, and if there is a standard in place that we can then take that person and hand a case to a prosecutor and let that prosecutor run with it. And I'm I guess less troubled by some of the weird mistakes that you wouldn't even think about doing, like we're seeing a couple of mistakes in this case, some that are pretty egregious, like Ed was bringing out early on. I was listening as I was driving in. Those kinds of things really trouble you, but there's a tendency when you're dealing with occult-based or cult-based or closed society kinds of crimes is to focus too much on that aspect of the crime. And what I used to teach investigators is take all of that wacky stuff that's going on and just put it on a shelf for a season while you investigate the case, and look at the case doing what you already know how to do, which is see if those elements of the crime are there, see if there's the evidence you need to produce the kinds of direction you're taking in the case, and not start building some wacky theory in your mind without having a bunch of evidence in front of you, but keep doing what cops should do, which is just gather facts and gather evidence. And then the place for the occult kind of stuff in those kinds of investigations, from my perspective, and I'm looking forward to hearing from the counselor here, because my opinion has always been, save that till sentencing time to show aggravation or other kinds of things, but don't muddy the water with all that smoke and mirror stuff during the stages of the investigation. So the defense made a brilliant move bringing it up.
Melanie, over
Yes, I agree. I mean, there is so much here that it's just hard to ignore. And like I said at the beginning of this show, the only issue in this motion is whether or not the search warrant was obtained legally to search Alan's home. That is it. That is, I mean, you could take this 136 pages and that is the only issue that is to be decided here. There's a lot of spaghetti being thrown out. And it was a brilliant move because the public doesn't know any details about this case. And we have been waiting since 2017 to find out some details about this case. And now all of a sudden we're being hit with satanic rituals and perhaps, human sacrifices. And it's my head is spinning.
Melanie, I have to tell you, I heard a lot of attorneys take on this, and you're the first one that said what made most sense to me is that search warrant. That's it. Again, you could take 136 pages and throw them up in the air.
That's what this is all about, really, isn't it, Ron? And I mean, I would throw this at Ed, just that bullet, and whether they can compare that bullet recovered at the scene with the weapon that was recovered. And I mean, there are going to be a lot of people and a lot of defense motions saying, hey, there were cops all over. One of them could have dropped that round, or 1,000 other things. Could have cops cycle rounds out of their weapon when they go home at night and put their gun away. Right. But if that thing forensically matches up, that is the golden ticket. And so Melanie's exactly right. In my opinion, that's the thing to get rid of. That's the prime target in all of this.
Right. And microscopic forensic tool marks are going to be left on the cartridge case, ejection and extractor marks specifically, from ejecting a live cartridge out of the chamber, as I said earlier. So again, the forensic ballistics expert would look at the cartridge case under the microphone, have that gun, and then do a series of exemplars ejecting live cartridges out of that gun, the same ammunition that was found, and do a microscopic comparison to see if these tool marks on the extractor and ejector line up and match. And they're going to generate a report and say it's a match or it's not a match.
And this is why I like having forensic investigators. My co-host, Ed, he's an expert.
I mean, other than that, they got nothing. They have no DNA. They have no fingerprints. And who knows if they even, searched the bodies for DNA, or they did the DNA workup on the alleged bloods that was found on a tree, and it matches one of the victims. We know them for a fact that it is one of the victims' blood that was found on the tree. I would like to see what that pattern actually looks like, and not some rendering or drawing of it.
It's attached to the motion as an exhibit. The actual crime scene photos are attached, but they sealed them. So that's the one part that I don't have, is the actual physical copies of the photographs. Because I want to see it too. If they're saying, and this is, when a lawyer signs off on this, he's swearing to the truth of this and the veracity of this, and you could get disbarred, for lying in an affidavit. Right. So when he says the F was painted on the tree, attached here too as an exhibit are photographs from the crime scene showing this F painted on the tree.
Well, who told him that? Because the typical lawyer doesn't have the expertise to come to that conclusion. So did the lawyer hire a forensic expert, a bloodstain pattern analyst, who told them that it was painted on the tree?
I submit to you that the pictures that we saw of that blood spatter I would not characterize that as being painted on a tree, right? I would say that's blood spatter. So whatever that graphic is that Court TV dreamed up in its head, in my opinion, quite frankly, is probably nothing like the actual photograph.
I feel
like attached to the motion,
right now.
Like the other renderings that they drew of the body with the limbs, and it was just based on the written word. And they took it and said, "Oh, this is what we think it looks like."
Right.
All right, friends, I have to do this because our great friend Mike King took out his time tonight. I want to highlight a little bit of piece that he did with Vinny. This was from yesterday. I thought it was brilliant, and I want to play it because I love my friend Mike King.
Let's dive a little deeper into this. Joining me tonight from Washington, D.C., retired police commander, host of the Profiling Evil podcast, also an expert in cults and types of cases like this. Mike King is with us. Mike, great to see you tonight. This is extremely surprising. Wasn't expecting it. We're going through a lot tonight. But let's start with this description of the sticks and everything else, and this religion, Odinism. My understanding, Odinism goes back a long, long way.
Yeah, I mean, I remember looking at Odinism as part of looking into pagan belief systems, and this Odinism is separate from what you'd see in Judaism or Islam or Christianity. It's a real focus on these Nordic and Germanic gods. So think, for lack of a better example here, think of Marvel Comics, because that Thor, the guy with the big hammer, and his little brother Loki, who caused all the trouble, they were the children of Odin. Their father was Odin, and he is this guy who gave up his eye in search of more wisdom and other kinds of things. And so as people look at these different worship systems, you have people that are looking at monotheistic belief systems, like many Christians do, one God out there, or you have polytheistic religious belief systems that look at many gods. And we really came to know this when we were doing the Who Killed King Tut stuff that I worked on with Greg Cooper. And that polytheistic belief system is actually what led to Tut's death. So you can't discount these kinds of things when you hear them, and you really have to dig in and try to understand them. But you also can't go down a rabbit hole without evidence that's supportive of it. And what we're hearing is some pretty interesting stuff.
So I love that, Mike. I love that little piece right there. Melanie, I wanted to go to you because people are confused by this. I see the chat. There's people in the chat. And Ed, there's a lot of questions that we're going to take your questions in the chat. Hashtag Mike, hashtag Ed, hashtag DutyRon, hashtag Melanie. There's 4 of us. Put your questions in there when we're ready to take them. But Melanie, what I wanted to go to you on is this information was not just some conjured up story by the defense. Nope. Please, again, walk the audience through where this information comes and why it was put out there.
All of this information comes from discovery that the prosecution turned over to the defense. It's all in there. That's everything they gave them, except for some stuff that they didn't give them, which we already talked about, the pictures of the bullets. They had to go actually to Georgia to find a witness that the prosecution, they say, was hiding from them. But all of this evidence, they're not just making this stuff up. This was given to them by the prosecution. And it's also based on things that they observed in the correctional facility. You know, the part about the patches that the corrections officers were wearing. So they're not making this stuff up, you guys, and they've got the photographs to back it up. And I'm going to go so far as to say that, in my opinion, because I hear a lot of people talking about that picture that we just looked at of that letter F made out of blood spatter, that is something that Court TV invented. That is a graphic that they came up with based on a woman who was on that show that said, my sources say that it looked kind of like this. That is not evidence in this case. That is not the crime scene photograph that is attached to this motion. And I see a lot of people getting caught up in that. And I think that was kind of irresponsible for them to put that out there. And it's going to confuse a lot of people because we don't know what that crime scene photograph looks like. But I don't think it looks like that. And we may never know because those exhibits may never be shown to the public. They may only be shown to the jury if it gets that far.
Again, and maybe in a little defense to Court TV, I watched all of their coverage of it, and they put up a little depiction saying that this is, you know, not anything from the court or from the crime scene. So they did put that little disclaimer out there. It was just they were just trying to give the audience a little bit of what, you know, a view of
No,
that.
I'm not. I'm just saying that the public is going to interpret that the wrong way.
Correct.
And I see a lot of
Exactly,
people in the chat
exactly.
talking about that right now, saying that wasn't painted, that was spatter. But what you're saying is, yes, they did put a disclaimer, but I think the general public is not gonna, it's not gonna register that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let's go to you, Mike. I wanted to ask you quickly your thoughts because I asked our users to send in on DutyRon.com questions, and oh boy, Mike, did they send questions in? I wanted to ask you quickly your thoughts on court officers or correction officers, actually correction officers wearing the patches of this alleged cult. It's in the documents. They name a sergeant in there. Saying that he was wearing these patches. I mean, I know this doesn't go on in Rikers Island. It doesn't go on in our state correctional facilities here in New York because I've been in and out of them. I've been in and out of the tri-state correction facilities, Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, so forth. Your thoughts on this in Indiana?
I'll tell you what, I was incensed to hear that. Number one, that anyone's allowed to go outside of an authorized uniform and add their own toppings to their ice cream. That if that's all true, and I can only believe that at this point they're going to be able to back up that it's true with a witness, or they themselves, the lawyers, are saying they witnessed it. If I read that right. I find that absolutely inappropriate that it's outside. So it's going to be a dig into the policy to see what the policy says, see what the standard is in the organization. Like you, I have never seen that in any facility I've been in the United States. And you know, I did a study for the Bureau of Justice of serial killers who killed elderly women, and they had to have at least 4 victims. So it was a very prescriptive kind of an interview process. I went to prisons all over the United States talking to predators who selected elderly women as their victims. I never saw it in any of those either, Ron. So I'm just offended by that. I hope that it somehow comes back that was maybe overstated. And if it wasn't, boy, they've got some splaining to do.
Absolutely. Ed, I wanted to go to you on it too, as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some things worn on police vests and court officers' vests. You know, things like Saint Michael, the Archangel, things. What do they call them? All kinds of patches, like the Punisher, or some of the other, you know, Greek mythology figures that represent law enforcement and law and order and things like that. Yeah, it's usually out of policy with the department. You know, you're in violation of typically a department procedure for, you know, wearing stuff like that. In fact, there was a female sergeant who in the NYPD who was disciplined for wearing a patch on her uniform that was witnessed at a protest, and a protester took offense to it and made a complaint, and she was brought to the trial room for wearing this patch, which said, what does it say?
You're going to think about it after we're done.
Make law enforcement great again, or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah. So again, it's not commonplace, and as Mike said, it's an outrage. You know, these facilities are supposed to be run in accordance with state guidelines, and if somebody's doing something like that, then it should definitely be pointed out. And like you said, Mike, they have some splaining to do, if in fact, because it is written in those documents. I see Melanie; she is tapping her foot right now.
I mean, I think it's easily proven, isn't there? They're saying in their documents that these 2 guards were assigned to him exclusively all the time. There's got to be video footage of these guys guarding him all the time, right? Aren't there cameras all over? This would be a great time to have Anthony on. Ask him these questions. You know, there's got to be some video footage of these guys in their uniforms before they allegedly took them off.
We're going to keep it at our Hollywood squares of 4 because Anthony will all of a sudden be in the studio if we say that.
Well, it should be easily provable.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes.
Okay, so I mean, their supervisors know. The supervisors of these individuals know, you know, what they're wearing, and if they've seen that kind of a patch on them before.
And let's be reminded here, you know, there's still a gag order in effect, right, with this case. So it does eliminate a lot of information being put out by law enforcement, by the prosecution, by the defense. But Melanie, I have to go to you because you got the bulk of the questions. I mean, Mike was the second runner-up, and then me, then Ed, and then me. I was last. Can you explain a Frank's hearing and what it is?
Yeah. So a Frank's hearing is held to determine whether or not a search warrant was issued based on lies. So basically, if the police officer lied in his affidavit to the judge in order to get the judge to sign off on the search warrant to search Richard Allen's home, that search warrant would be invalidated, and anything that was found during that search would be thrown out of evidence. It's called fruit of the poisonous tree. So a lot of this motion is arguing that Liggett lied to the judge in order to get that search warrant. There's I don't want to go through all the evidence, but there's a lot of discrepancies in the timeline, a lot of discrepancies in what the witnesses saw with regard to this man that they saw. And one of the women gave an affidavit and said, I did not say that. I said he was a young man with bushy hair. I did not say it was this time. I said it was this time. Right. So when Liggett did his affidavit, they're saying he lied. And because he lied to get it, he never would have gotten that search warrant. Therefore, the search warrant should have been issued. Therefore, whatever they found during the course of that search warrant is thrown out of evidence. And without that gun and that bullet, like you guys said, what else do they have?
They got nothing.
And yeah, we got a big donut, double donuts. But Melanie, and a follow-up to that, and these are questions coming in from our users. Who determines the validity of these accusations? Whose job is it to determine the validity of this? The judge, or
the judge will hold a hearing, and he will, take testimony. And remember, these guys have all given depositions, so they've already given sworn testimony. So in this motion, they have, testimony of Liggett, and they kind of caught him in a couple of traps because they knew about some of this stuff about Odinism and stuff before they deposed him, but they didn't know that the defense knew about it because none of this Odinism stuff was turned over to the defense.
And this trial was slated to start in January of 2024, lasting approximately 6 weeks. Is this going to affect any of? And this is again a user question. I'm kind of know the answer to this, but is this going to affect this trial date going forward? I'll go to you, Melanie, and then I'll go over to Ed and Mike.
First, we need to get the response from the prosecution to this motion. Then they're going to decide if they need a hearing. Then they can certainly hold a hearing before January. And what that hearing is going to determine is whether or not that initial search warrant to search his home was valid and obtained legally. And if it was not, they'll just throw out the gun as evidence and they can try the case without the gun. Without the bullet and the gun, fruits of the poisonous tree.
Yeah. Well, how can they do that? The only other evidence may be the videotape on the phone, but there's nothing there. I mean, they don't have any DNA. They don't have any fingerprints. They're going to say, okay, the jailhouse confessions, right? They said they caught him telling his family members over telephone calls from jail to the family members of him confessing to these crimes.
6 times.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have it.
They have reasons for that too.
Yeah. Mike, any thoughts on some of this stuff? You know what I mean? There was also in the conversations that are swirling around the internet that Richard Allen was intimidated by some of the jail correction officers and, being put in solitary confinement in that state prison, which is something that is normally not done. His defense team has been saying from the beginning that he is, under a lot of stress and that he gave this statement and this confession under a lot of duress. And we all have our thoughts on it. So I just wanted to go to you to see what your thoughts are on this.
I'm really troubled by the allegation that they were filming him and his lawyers. That really bothers me, and I'll tell you what, I like to see justice happen, and I like to see criminals go to prison, but that's really seems weird to me, and I think that's going to be a challenge on the policy of the organization, whether they were directed. I can't believe a court would have directed them to do that. So if they came up with that themselves, if it truly was the same correctional officers every time, I think that makes his case a little stronger to say I was intimidated in this consortium of voodoo. And I'll tell you what, again, this was a brilliant move on the defense part to bring Satanism or Odinism or voodoo into the picture, because we as people can't wrap our heads around this crazy stuff. So we want something to explain it. And this is a great way of explaining it. And, you know, like watching Karen Reed and what's going on in that case, and how people have just become so polarized against the criminal justice system and the processes of law enforcement after years of defund and everything else. I think it was a good move. I'm not saying that I think that they were making it up in any way. I'm just saying it was a good move to bring it out, and it made perfect sense why all of a sudden we saw them say, hey, we want cameras in the courtroom, because this stuff will inflame people. And all they got to do is inflame 1 to 4 jurors, and they've won their case.
100%.
Yeah.
I left Melanie on there in case you wanted to cross-examine Mike. But
Well, I was just going to say, yeah, not only were they filming the conversations with the attorneys, but the allegations are they were filming them with a handheld camcorder.
Yeah,
While
not an
Richard
overhead
Allen was
camera like
facing
watching.
a window.
Yeah.
So it wasn't
Oh.
surreptitiously. It was
No.
it was right there. I mean, in violation of
Yeah,
attorney-client privileges. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
And I think that when questioned about it, you know, and we did a live on this, I believe the warden from that facility said because he was on 24-hour watch, it was part of the facility policy, which
For suicide watch, you mean?
yes.
Oh, okay.
So
All right.
maybe that's where their little catch-22, their little justification came in there. So
You know, I'll tell you what, Rondo, I remember sitting with serial killers in the prison system, and they were shackled to a floor, and I was able to sit in an open room with them, and I knew there was a camera watching, and nobody came in the room to sit down with me. There are ways to solve that problem rather than what really feels intimidating. And it might have been the right thing. I don't know, because I don't know their policy. I don't know what they were told to do.
Right.
But the whole thing I've just never seen happen. It seemed awfully odd.
yeah, it definitely did. ATS News, thank you, Amber. She says it's a loophole, perhaps. And you know, again, these guys that they knew that this was going to come out. I mean, they were doing it not just once; they were doing it on a regular basis. But yeah, troubling to say the least. So Mike and Melanie, if you guys don't mind, I'm going to go to the chat now. # Mike, # DutyRon, # Ed, # Melanie. Put your questions in the chat, and we'll take them. We're at the 53-minute mark. Mike, you had sent me some photographs. I did try, and that's what caused my little snafu earlier.
I'm so sorry.
I was trying to download them, and I have 3 screens in front of me. You know how it is, us older folk. We don't technology is not our best friend. So
That's true.
I started playing with the stuff that was put into place by my engineer, and all of a sudden I got screens popping up, and I got Ed and Melanie, which you guys were having a great conversation. Everybody wanted you to revisit it. If you remember what you guys were saying,
Yeah.
it was 2 minutes,
I'm waiting.
seconds. So maybe if you guys go to that, and I'll look at the chat. I'll put Melanie and Ed. What were you conversating about when I disappeared?
We're talking about lividity, about determining the true location where the victims may have been killed by the positioning of the lividity on the body, and also the lack of blood at the crime scene where the bodies were found. What is it called? Something alert, trigger alert. Okay. One of the bodies was almost devoid of blood.
Yep.
Okay. And it didn't seem like there was blood at the scene to where they were found for that to have occurred there. So what we're talking about lividity is when bodies, when someone dies and they're lying or in some specific position, whether it's hanging or lying on the floor or sitting in a chair, blood will, due to gravity, flow to the low points in the body, and over time it will become fixed, and that you can readily see that. But if the body is in a position for a period of time, and based on, again, climate conditions, humidity, what temperature, and so forth, in the position for a period of time, you'll get a partial fix. And then if the body is moved, then you'll have a second lividity at another, based upon gravity for that new position. So in the importance of looking at the lividity on these bodies would tell you, this may be a secondary location where they were brought to from another location. And they were in one position at a previous location and they were in a different position now because the lividity is defying gravity. All right. I mean, these are things that we need to look at to understand. And, there was a question in the chat about what is staging, or the bodies were staged in that they were positioned, their limbs were put in certain positions. Now, that has to occur either before or after rigor mortis. Okay. So because after you die and over time, and again, it all depends on where you are, temperature, humidity, and so forth, and activity of the body before death, the muscles will stiffen. And then as more time passes, the muscles will release that position, and then you can move the limbs. So the bodies, now there's nothing, no one said anything about whether these limbs were in rigor at the time the bodies were found, or were they out of rigor. And so all these things are important for determining time of death and secondary or primary locations where the bodies may have been. So there's a lot of information here. And it's also said that the victims would have to have forged through a stream, right? To get to the location where they were, right? And again, we also know that the victims were stripped down and the clothing was swapped from one victim to the other, right? One was found, naked? And
right.
The other had the other victim's clothing on her. Okay, so, where's all the blood? Where did these change of clothes occur? Because if you did that in the field, the odds are you're going to find, when you're changing clothes of a victim, where's the other victim's clothes, by the way? They're gone. They're not recovered, right? And you're going to mix indigenous plant life, leaves, grasses, or whatever the case may be, in with that clothing. When you're swapping clothing, it's going to be there. Okay, unless you're in a sterile environment someplace where you have control and good lighting and all the privacy, and you're doing this thing someplace else. And getting back to the stream, the clothes that were found, were they examined to see if there was any microscopic aquatic life that could have been bedded in the clothing to show that they went through that river or that stream? Because then you can get a water sample and try to examine the contents of the water, mineral content, and any aquatic amoebas and other plant and life that's in the water. And then that would get trapped in the clothing. And then you could say, okay, we can now prove that, yeah, it appears that this clothing went through the water. Okay. Was any of that done? Did they pick up the soil underneath the body? Did they collect all of that and search it? Did they search the body with ultraviolet light, with infrared photography, to see if there was any signs that these bodies were washed or cleaned? All right.
Now I see Melanie was shaking her head no, and I know from reading this 136-page document that some of the stuff wasn't done, Ed. They talked about the ground underneath the victims was not collected. The sticks were not collected. Nothing from the tree was collected. We talked about the ballistic, the round, the unspent round. It's just mind-boggling. You just went through so much that I hope and pray that they would have done this stuff, but it doesn't seem like it. And that's the scary part on this, is that I don't know. There's lots of unknowns, but this is problematic when it comes to the state presenting their case, because the defense is going to have a field day with it.
Yeah, I wanted to go to Mike for some questions. Can I?
Yeah, of course.
Because I'm like such a big fan. I'm like fangirling over here. It's embarrassing. I watch your show all the time. But I want to ask you, what are your thoughts on time of death? I mean, they're saying that, one person couldn't have done this in an hour and 17 minutes. Where are they getting this time of death from? Where are they getting this, as we go back to the lividity, like, where are the autopsy reports? I don't even know if they were attached to this. And, what do you make of the fact that the clothes were completely clean, that were redressed on one of the girls, and that I mean, what do you make of all this? It's a big mishigas.
Yeah, I'll approach it kind of from an academic standpoint when I would teach profiling, and then just from a gut perspective, because like I would never even begin to challenge Ed when it comes to the physical and forensic kinds of evidence. The place where I kind of add some, I think, a little bit of content is the behavioral evidence. So a couple things I think are important to think about. One is, we know that there was the word gun used, and that there was an idea that there was a gun based on the video. And we know that a bullet was recovered, and if the evidence holds up and the search warrant holds up, that there was a weapon recovered that matches that. That's a really easy way to have control of people, especially young girls, even though they might have been, really strong young girls. And so someone getting that kind of compliance, we have this kind of emotional thing that happens in our mind when we're confronted with something this dramatic. We put our own value system into the predator's mind. We think, okay, he's telling me do this and you're not going to get hurt. And our value system says, I would never hurt anyone. I would never shoot someone or stab them or do these things. And so we comply based on our own value system, not on the value system of the predator that we're dealing with. And so first and foremost, we have to think that he could have gotten control. He could have forced those children. And I get hit with this because I say children, but to me, they're still children. These children, he forces them and has compliance. He could have gotten them to take their clothing off. I start thinking about, and I want to just from an academic perspective say, there's a kind of an interesting delineation between posing and staging. And the staging could actually be the placement of these wood pieces. If in fact the branches and twigs were placed to symbolically represent a rune, like people are saying, and if this Odinism thing is holding true, or the F on the tree. And we can start to assign, again, because our minds can't wrap around it, why certain things may happen. Richard Ramirez was famous for staging and putting a pentagram on the wall. Some people called it a signature. Richard told me personally that it was just good business to do that. Those kinds of things are really kind of interesting. So you think about the difference between doing things like that, maybe having one of the children dressed at the end. Is that a sign that there was some remorse in this predator's mind, and he has that kid, hey, put some clothes on? And another one he's more focused on as a preferential victim, or he's more angry at that person for some reason, and that way he's going to leave her exposed with no clothing on. The bending of the legs and other things becomes the posing. So you have staging, and then you have posing. And each of those give us a little glimpse into the mindset of the predator and what they might be thinking. And Ron, if you have those pictures, this would be a great time to put it up, because basically we're making a lot of hay about symbols that we haven't seen. And some people have assigned those symbols as runes and said, this is a sign that it was Odinism, and this is an F. Well, it might be something that's just simply easy to understand and explain, like the guy tried to wipe off a stick that he was experimenting on the victim with, and one way wasn't cleaning it as much as maybe another way. That could quickly create an F. And I use this example here because this, in the mind of Sasquatch hunters, is absolute proof that Sasquatch exists. Now, to an arborist or a Forest Service firefighter, no, this is what wind does to brittle trees and branches and other kinds of things. And these things, as a natural course of what is going on in the environment, create what other people dream up to be proof that something evil or disdained is happening and going on. And I'm going to just end with this, and it's a personal experience I had when I was chasing Satan for so many years. On one particular occasion, I got a phone call that in the middle of central Utah, that a helicopter, a black helicopter no less, in the middle of the night with alien spaceships came in and wiped out a herd of cattle. And those cattle had beautiful surgical lines. And I remember I was brand new at doing cult investigations, and I went out and heard this wild tale of this cult that was out there systematically cutting the eyes out of the cows and removing the uterus out of the cows. And I happened to get out to this place with a fish and game cop that was old and seasoned. And I'm looking at it and I'm going, holy cow, it does look surgical. And he like slugged me and he said, have you never seen a dead animal that's starting to bloat and it's going to pull the skin and make it look surgical? And he said, the first thing a coyote's going to go to are the soft, squishy parts of the body to remove them. Yeah. And he said, and then you're missing a really important clue. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he says, if you look around the head of the cow, there's a whole bunch of magpie mess from the magpies sitting on top of this thing, removing the eyes. And all of a sudden, what was voodoo was simply explainable.
It's funny because I've had a television show contact me and wanted me to do forensic work on the Chupacabra and the Bigfoot. And I said, no, I'm not interested.
Interesting. So many questions came in while we were jabber-jawing back and forth. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to scroll back to some of these questions because you guys put them back in the new chat again. If you obviously I didn't get to them, but they were going like fire. So there was a ton of questions, and the chat's moving so fast that it's hard for me to go back and find these.
Well, there was a question about DNA on the clothing, and there is a possibility of that occurring if the suspect touched the clothing with, bare skin, bare hands, and things of that nature. That is a possibility. But if the clothing was cleaned, or if the clothing was exposed to the environment, UV is a killer of DNA for a while. Extreme heats and temperature can also kill DNA, but it is a possibility, and it should have been searched. And also the victim's skin should have been searched for DNA by means of infrared photography, UV light, in addition to also searching for fingerprints on the skin.
Right. Hey, Ed, and in response to one question Melanie had that I just flat didn't know how to best answer, could the bodies of the children ending up in that water delayed that time frame so that hour and a half that they somehow are coming up with, and I think they're trying to describe or explain that with lividity or the process of the rigidity leaving, could that have delayed all that and actually given whoever the predator or predators is more time than that time frame?
Well, are you suggesting that, depending if we're talking about like lividity and also rigor mortis, if they were dead and they were in the water and the water was cold, yes, that would impact it. But if they were alive, okay, that's a different scenario, right? Are you suggesting dead or alive?
I'm suggesting dead and in the water.
Dead and in the water, yes.
And explaining why maybe the body was more clean than it should have been in that kind of a crime scene if we're understanding what happened.
Yes, it definitely could impact it, especially we're talking with the time of the year it was and the temperature of the water. And that's another reason too, to take water samples and then to swab the body. To swab the body with clean gauze pads, swab it and with deionized water to see if you can pick up any of the mineral content of the water, any of the amoebas, the aquatic amoebas, and any of the other living pathogens and so forth that could be in that water that you can match. Even, listen, it could be something as simple as even fish feces if that water was stocked. Yeah. Right. So I mean, and then you can say, okay, we have a link here between the water and the girls.
A ton of science to this. I want to just say thank you to everybody who is live in the chat. If you're not yet subscribed to Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace, please consider subscribing. Also consider subscribing to Attorney Melanie Little, who just hit 100,000. Yeah, that's where I want her. She just hit 10,000 subscribers, and also Profiling Evil just hit 175,000 subscribers. Congratulations, Mike.
Hey, thanks.
again, all of these channels, including Melanie's, are in my suggested channels, and it's in the description. So you can't go wrong. It's a clickable link. So I made it easy for everybody. After the show is over and you've given us a thumbs up and made sure you're subscribed here, these two here are wonderful resources for all things true crime related, and the different perspectives that Mike brings forward and Melanie brings forward are just complementary to what we do. So we all mix well together, and this is what makes it a great community. And being able to share my fellow colleagues who do the same thing, it's just a wonderful thing for me to do. And I've been doing it since I started in 2019 here on YouTube. So great to have everybody. DC Primetime, she's been very patient, but has been tapping her heels on the ground. She says, hashtag Ed Wallace, did the drawing from court TC took look more like a cast off or arterial spatter? That's a great one.
No professional bloodstain pattern analyst would render an opinion based on someone's drawing. I'm just not going to stick my neck out like that to have it chopped off. Okay, I mean, I need to see the actual photos. I need to see the actual measurements with and without scales, which apparently wasn't done. I'm not. Wait. Let me back that up. That was with the cartridge casing, but I'd have to see all of that and the height on the tree. I didn't need to know all this information. There's just too many missing pieces of this puzzle to even speculate.
That's a professional right there, ladies and gentlemen. He's not just going to spew it out just to give you the answer that you want. But listen, this is all about again, learning here. So that's what we're all here for. And I'm just sitting back here taking my own notes. I've got notes all over the place. You got to see my studio. It looks like something out of a movie. There's stickums and Post-its all over the place. Mike King, everyone's sending you love. And Dr. Pamela says, where did it go? Ed does not play. He does not.
It's not taking the bait on that one.
No.
Yeah.
Homie, don't play that.
But DC, thank you for tapping your heels and coming up with the questions. Let me go to the super chats because I often want to say thank you to everyone who's given these super chats. So I'll go right through them real quick. Retired Irish Detective, thank you for everything you've done. I worked with Retired Irish Detective in housing PSA 2, East New York and Brownsville. We worked high risk patrol together. Dennis, it's good to see you living your best life down in Florida. Rippy for Freedom says, as a person familiar, thank you for the $10 super chat. The one girl is posed. We went in through all of this. We've already answered these questions. Thank you for bringing it up, and thank you for being here. Thank you for being a member. Appreciate that. Gerlin, I might be mauling that name. Michael Joseph Murray, who has been with me since Periscope. That's the Twitter live application before I came to the pro leagues. Michael's been with me for the whole time. Ed, what are you doing to me, Ed? I'm going through the super chats.
Were you on MySpace too?
Were you a nerd in high school? People want to know that. Let me put Ed full screen for that one.
Define nerd. Let's see.
Yes.
I was on the baseball team. I was in the band. I was the treasurer of this student body.
That's yes.
What do you want to? What else can I?
We need a yearbook photo.
Oh, okay. I was the king of the prom.
All right, let me finish these. Cowboy Saddle sends in a $5 super chat, and he or she says, Melanie rocks. I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. Love is a 4-letter word. Thank you for your super chat. She says, so much love for you, Melanie Little. You're going to be at 100,000 in no time at all. Keep up the good work. Much love. Thank you. Amber sends another super chat, and she says, hey, friends, don't forget to hit the like button. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up. Thank you.
I'm looking for a yearbook photo.
Okay,
he's not kidding.
Find it.
I used to tease him when he would do this when we first started out. I'd say, Ed's checking the Hang Sang. He's big investor. DC Primetime sent in a super chat. Thank you for the $5. Do you see the defense argument is more of a cult sack or a initiation into a hate group? Yeah, I think we covered that. I think we kind of answered that a little bit, but Do you want to take that, Melanie? Because it's
I don't really think it's an argument as much as it is an alternative theory that they're saying that the law enforcement never looked into. That's what they're saying. They're saying that they had leads. There were, I think maybe three detectives that were pursuing these leads into Odinism and certain people that they actually name in these papers, which I'm not going to name.
No.
And they talk about their Facebook pages. And one guy actually posted some photos on his Facebook page that were very disturbing, which were photos of women posed in the exact same way that these two girls were posed. And nobody had that information outside of law enforcement. None of that information was public. And a large part of this argument is, look, they knew about this guy. They knew about these Facebook posts, or if they didn't know, it would have been very easy to look at his Facebook history to see that he posted these things. And why did you rule him out as a suspect within 10 days or something?
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because I completely forgot about it. Jersey Girl sends in a super chat. Thank you, Melanie. Jersey Girl sends in a super chat and she sends a question to Mike. What's the difference from Wicca versus Odin?
Well, that could be we'll do another show on that. And frankly, I'm not an expert. I mean, a lot of my Odinism experience came from watching Marvel Comics and doing some study once this thing came out big. But I do know that all of those Germanic based kinds of events started out with Roman theology, and the Romans determined Germanic based on those living north, which would cover places like Norway and Sweden and Denmark and that region, all of which I've actually worked in. I've been the big thing we keep talking about is the predator up in Norway that shot up the school. I've been to that location with Norway police but I'm no expert on these things other than I am an expert on wackos.
Well, Mike, thank you for tackling. But Ed Wallace has pulled up his yearbook picture. Here we go. Oh my!
Oh,
he really was the prom king.
Wow.
How many nerds are the prom king?
I know one's right in front of me, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I was in the Honor Society. I was I was academic. I was sports.
Yeah,
I was a
nerd.
Renaissance man.
Ed, let's have lunch next week and we'll talk about this in person. Ripping for Freedom. Yes, you can come.
Okay.
And Mike, you're welcome too, because you're going to be here next week.
Yeah.
Ripping for Freedom sends in a $10 super chat. Thank you so much for the support. We're not going to go into that, but yes, I appreciate you sharing your personal familiarity with this topic that we're talking about, but we need to do it on another show. Angela, thank you for the super chat. She says, all of you guys are truly the best. Thank you, Angela.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. D Banks has been a member for over a year. She said, nerds are sexy, Ed, with a thumbs up. There you go.
It's not the only sexy comment I've seen about Ed in the chat today.
Oh,
Ed, like number 3.
Yeah, Ed's the ladies love Ed, but he's a married man, so leave him alone. Princess Mitch is a member for 44 months. Thank you to you and your husband Rob in the great state of Arizona for supporting Crime Time with DutyRon and many, many other channels. She says, great show tonight. If Ed was a nerd, he was a cool one. So
thank you, my princess.
We got all the super chats. So again, we're going to continue to cover this. Mike, I hope that you may invite Ed and I, maybe Melanie as well, onto your channel one night. I know
it'd be fun. Let's do it.
Yeah, we'd love to come and hang out with you guys over at Profiling Evil. Again, if you're not yet subscribed to Mike King and Profiling Evil and Melanie Little, go on over there and do that. Give some love to Ed and I. I saw 5 cups of coffee from 5 different people. So I think we've got 35 cups of coffee to start drinking, Ed. So thank you to everyone who's bought cups of coffee during the course of this live stream, and the support. It goes a long way. Oh, I see a good friend, Natasha Richardson here. She says, everyone's taken here. Imagine, remember me? Hi, Mike. So there's
yes, I do.
Your friends from over at Profiling Evil.
Remember, there's only one king on this program tonight, and that's Mike King.
That's it.
Oh, I like the sound of that. Hey, I am going to be at Crime Con. I'm going to be doing Court TV Live with Vinny down there, and so I'm going to fly from DC tomorrow down to Crime Con and visit some friends. But yeah, next week I'm going to be leaving 1PP guys, and on Wednesday and heading out to Long Island. So I'm Ron and I are talking about maybe going for a geek drive or something.
Yeah, let's hook up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's go to Gilgo and reenact the Shannon Gilbert run.
Well, we don't want to
I
reenact.
am an
it.
actress, you know, I could do
Oh,
it.
boy. All right. Well, we'll talk about this after the show's over. Mike, if you could hang around for a little bit of debrief after this is over.
Certainly.
I want to just say thank you to all of the replay viewers, our moderators who keep this chat really nice and classy, and everybody is a wonderful. This community is, I truly believe, one of the best. And there's, you know, again, Mike and Melanie and everyone's got some great communities. Ed's smiling because he's highlighting funny chats. But I'm serious about this. I do not take your subscription and your support for granted. I want to thank each and every one of you guys for tuning in to watch a couple of old guys and a pretty young woman talk about crime. It really makes this place worthwhile, and it makes me really proud to be here on YouTube, bringing this type of content to you guys. So thank you. The replay viewers, we love you. The super thanks, the super chats, the subscriptions, the memberships, the Patreon support. I can't thank you guys enough. And no matter what you do, it is appreciated. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Our September 11th video, Ed, has so many comments of support for police, not only just here in New York, but across the globe. So I want to thank our police supporters, the men and women that are out there putting their lives on the line day in and day out. They need your support because there are really good ones out there. The ones that are bad is a very small percentage. Ed, what are you doing? You're laughing.
Well, we have a husband and wife doctors that are in the show tonight, right? And so Mrs. Dr. J is saying that her husband was the prom king too. So, and now he's saying that his wife is now hiding.
Jeez Louise. All right. So before the show gets any more derailed, I was trying to have a serious moment. I want to thank my guests for coming on in. Guys, just keep following us for updates. We're going to watch and follow this closely. There's a lot more to unpack. There's so much more to talk about here. And Melanie, what's the next court date? Did you catch the next court?
I don't know. They have to put papers on they're going to have to oppose this motion. And then I don't know what the return date of this motion is. I would imagine that, you know, some judges like oral arguments, some judges like to decide on paper. So I can't answer that question right now.
All right. Well, we'll see. I mean, I'm sure that Court TV and the rest of the crew are going to be covering this closely. We're going to keep looking at it. We'll keep checking for updates. Ed, I know you got some final thoughts for the crew.
It was a great show tonight. I want to thank everybody for being here. And just remember always, folks, stay safe, stay prepared, and watch your six.
Mike, I'm going to go over to you for your final thoughts.
Just thank you so much for letting me join. And folks, remain balanced. Don't swing one way or another when something like this comes out. Just keep collecting facts and make some decisions based on fact.
Excellent. And Melanie?
I just want to say that we get caught up in all this stuff and 136 pages of stuff and all of these theories and stuff like that. But this case is really about Abby Williams and Libby German, and we can't ever forget that. And two beautiful girls whose lives were cut short. And prayers up for everyone in their family. It must be horrifying for them to have to hear all of this and to read all of this and to listen to us even talk about it. So I just want to bring some attention to that, and our prayers and thoughts are with them.
Always.
Amen
always.
to that. I wanted to share a picture of the girls, Abby Williams, Liberty German. This is a website dedicated to them and has a lot of information on it. I'll link it in the description. There's their photos. Again, on behalf of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace, we want to thank you for joining. Good night and God bless from New York City. Peace and love, guys. Good night.